You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo. And on today's show, we have Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder with us. Well, John, we're really getting up there, huh?
Well, we had a big break in between, so it's good to see that, we're pulling some weight and getting some nice big interview guests to talk about all the craziness that's been occurring the last year. It definitely is a lot to digest, so having some people like the commissioner and county exec to help digest it, definitely, I'm sure our listeners appreciate.
Today, again, we'd like to welcome Nassau County Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder to our show. Hello, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm good, Bill. How are you? Doing well. I see John's with us also.
Yep. Thanks again for joining us.
We're still cooking. We're still cooking, staying safe, hopefully. Man, it's been quite a ride for you for the last couple of months, though, no?
Yeah, it's been, you go back to January 1, we started with our justice reform. Mm-hmm. We had met after January, and we talked about justice reform, how that revolving door of the 80s started opening up with bail reform. And we get reform. We understand reform. There was a need for reform, but it should have been inclusive of the fact of conversations with law enforcement and our courts, because we can't have burglars keep coming out. You break into somebody's home, their most private location in the world for them, and then you steal from them, and then you get arrested. We let you out immediately the next day. And we had that problem with the Chilean group that was hitting us every other day with a new burglary. So we've made some changes in that world, so we've got past that, and then we rolled right into COVID. So it's been an interesting time.
Well, tell me something with the the bail release and all that stuff. One of the things I felt about it was that the discretion of judges had been taken out of the equation, almost as though a judge didn't even have a say. If he had a guy in front of him that he's known, you've been in front of me 15 times in this court, and yet the law says I got to let you go overnight. Did that come back? Did we get some discretion?
So they did get discretion back, and burglary 3, now that residential burglary is no longer you can issue bail in that case. I'll give you a real quick example. So I'm a shoplifter, and I've stolen from Macy's several times, and they sign a note saying you can't come back into the store. I go in, I shoplift, and I steal out of the store and I get arrested. That becomes a burglary. It's no longer a larceny. It's a burglary because you are not licensed and privileged to be there. That type of burglary compared to a burglar that breaks into your home in the middle of the night and steals everything out of your house, nobody's home, and it's a residential burglary 3. They're the same crimes. They should be treated differently. The outcome, this guy that broke into your home took on a real risk that somebody could be hurt and be in that home. This guy knew what he was doing. He just signed a piece of paper. So we can give bail if we choose to in this option. In this one, we shouldn't have to give bail. That person should stay at least till he gets to a hearing and then take it from there and then have his attorney argue to release him on his own afterwards. But again, it becomes that tricky little world. So we've corrected this. Judges now have discretion. The DA has a discretion to ask for it, and we get to hold them. At least now we're not going to let a serial burglar out.
Right. So, what that would say to me is that the reform is great, but, it should be one thing that we should take baby steps, really, to make sure that when we implement something, then we can smooth out the rough edges and the things that we see that don't work for the community.
We in society are a reactive society. So we want to change. Broad brush comes over, reforms. Same thing that's going on with George Floyd and the anti-police movement. What happened to George Floyd is horrific. It should never have happened, right? But it did. That's a bad cop, and that bad cop will answer to the criminal justice system. But then we don't paint the broad brush that all law enforcement are bad, So these become the challenges that we have. We got to stop being such a reactive society and be a responsive society and start working towards curing the wrongs, but not turn around and just going, everybody is under that umbrella now.
I put that under my heading of cooler heads need to prevail.
Well, I think, like you were just saying, a lot of times it's that pendulum swing, and it takes a while for it to come back towards the center, and for people to say, okay, well, we see that we need some larger changes, and maybe the baby steps don't really get us where we need to at first, but knowing when to dial back, when to again increase measures that do have a substantive benefit in the communities that are so concerned. And I know that's something, like you said, that you've been focused on a long time, Commissioner, with community policing and making sure that the officers are of the community and represent the community, not just in the abstract. Yep, there we go, reaching for a prop here. We got the booklet right there, Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. So, yep, and that's one of those. Go ahead.
That's the book that comes from the state and says, look, we need reforms now, police reform. So we had justice reform, COVID, unrest, protests, rioting, and then we rolled into reforms. And in the reform world, we're pretty good in Nassau County. We check most of the boxes. We can be better. We're not without sin. We can be always improve ourselves, and if we don't listen to the community, but that's what we've been doing. And as you just brought up, John, is as we've met and spoke before, we're always about community. We were brought up in 1925 as one of the first service-oriented police departments in the country. Service is what makes us so different than other departments. We respond to your house from the barking dog call to the homicide. We're coming. It doesn't matter. We're always going to address and service our public. Can we be better at the service? Should the service be equal and fair? Yes, and yes, and yes. So that's what we strive toward.
Yeah.
That's what reforms are going to do.
Of course. And that, like you said, this speaks, like you just mentioned, to the diversity of the responsibilities of police, from, like you said, the minor, small infractions, enforcement to major violent crimes. It's a lot on the plate of law enforcement officers, and seeing the conversation around the addition of social workers and different other supportive, again, kind of staff personnel within NCPD, and then also thinking about partner agencies, especially during COVID. We'll talk a little bit more about domestic violence and how some of those agencies that work with you guys around these issues, they weren't able to maybe serve their constituencies the same way that they normally would. So I'm sure, that's a lot of challenges that you guys have been trying to adapt to. But can you speak a little bit more about, again, those other tertiary kind of roles that police have involvement with, like I said, those service agencies and social workers?
So mental health. Mental health is one of the, it's in the reform, but it's a light touch. We're taking it as a more serious touch. A lot of the mental health issues here in Nassau County, our homelessness, our low-level drug issues, and sometimes our violent crime, a lot of it has to do with mental health. And how you respond to that mental health is important. We had a meeting just yesterday, and we talked about our response in the police department. Emergency Service Unit. They have over 600 hours of training that they do initially, and then they do an additional 60 hours a year about mental health training. Our BSO, our hostage negotiators that go and handle barricades. Our cops on a daily basis deal with at least 1 to 2 people a day with a mental health issue. Whether you're responding to a call or you'll see Johnny on the corner. Hey, John, how you doing? And John's autistic. John suffers from some, maybe his Downs or his dementia.
Even undiagnosed conditions, of course. Yep.
And we know that. We'll talk to John. And some guys, we don't know what the reason is that their mental health issue is, but we know that they're just not on the same page. So we talk and we engage. That's how we build our relationships with these individuals, that when something goes wrong, they want to speak to Officer Ryder. They don't want to speak to you. Yeah. So coupled with that, we always bring in our mobile crisis unit. Our mobile crisis unit are the experts. Mobile crisis will follow up on those that get released from hospitals. How you doing today, John? Are you on your medication? You feeling good? You seeing anything? No, I'm good. I'm not. 2 days later, he's off his medication. He's seeing, ghosts, or he's seeing vampires, and he's walking around the street with a knife in his hand because he's afraid of vampires coming after him. And these are real scenarios. Yeah. So our mobile crisis unit will respond to the scene with us. We control him, take the immediate threat away, and then let them step in. Out of 456 cases last year alone, we had to use force 4 times. That's it, 4 times. The rest of the time, we were able to use our what we call verbal judo, our mouth, talk them out of it. That de-escalation was a taser in one, mace in another, a shield to hold him and pin him down because he had knives. So these types of things shows that we have a great deal of experience in the field. We have a great patience and persistence to remain calm, de-escalate the situation, and then mobile crisis takes over. And then they follow through to make sure that that person then sustains that healthy way of living with his condition.
Yep, continuing to connect them to resources, like you said, to deal with the underlying causes. So, yeah, that's definitely important. And I know, we want to talk maybe a little bit more about reform as we go on, but also the nature of just being on the front line, both in these types of situations, like you just mentioned, but with COVID, having to be a part of, especially the EMTs, which NCPD has direct role in, obviously, with their personnel. So could you talk a little bit more, too, as today is 9/11, the anniversary, now the 19th year already, just seeing how, events like this really do shape the public psyche and, really kind of interrupt what we consider our everyday norm and take for granted. So can you talk again about some of the difficulties? I'm sure even the things that NCPD, like I said, EMTs have seen, they might need some counseling and some support through these kind of tough times.
Yeah. So law enforcement is a unique profession that, look, we always do the right thing. Sometimes we do the right thing without thinking, right? And then because we want to make sure we're doing what's right. We don't stop, think, and then do the right thing. And that was 9/11. Our response, we went in. I was there in 9/11. I'm probably one of the few left on this department that was actually working at 9/11. I remember being in one of the tunnels with a couple FDNY guys and city PD, and the horns banged 3 times. When they bang 3 times, that's distress. Get out. And we're backing out of this tunnel to get out looking for survivors. And I remember standing back watching one of the trade buildings, not the 2 towers, but one of the side buildings, was building 6, was swaying. And I'm going, there's nobody there. What are we doing? There's nobody. Because we would not leave our fallen brothers behind. That's the motto behind us. And that's why we will not forget. We will always remember our victims. But that day put a lot of trauma into a lot of people's lives, including our civilian world, but our police medics who respond. During COVID, our medics had to step forward, and actually the cops took a step back. Any call that was a COVID-related call or symptomatic, our PD would stand outside, the medic would go in first and say, I'll call you if I need you. If the medic can have that person's healthy enough to walk to the ambulance, they would walk them to the ambulance, and then our officers would drive with the proper protective gear on. Okay. Many times, if it's an emergency, obviously our cops were going in. We experienced about 196 members that got sick during the pandemic, those 3 months that received the COVID virus, between police and police medics. They got sick, they went home, they all got better, thank God. But what is the prolonged health issues? Nobody knows. Like 9/11, when I say that they told us the air was good, it wouldn't have mattered if they told us the air was bad. We were not leaving.
No, of course.
But at the same point, what's going to happen in 10 years from now, all these guys that have lung issues because of COVID?
Exactly. They were on the pile, like you said. So, yeah, that's what we were talking about before, the nature of, like you said, those similarities of rushing into danger, but, like you said, not knowing the long-term ramifications. But let's remind our listeners that we are listening to this week's Long Island News on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. And we are here, again, with Nassau Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. Go ahead, Bill.
You do that so well, John.
Try to remember that clock every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we wanted to talk about is, now that we have the pandemic and everybody's worried about COVID, and what's really the police department's role in, we have people who refuse to wear masks going into supermarkets, and, this whole idea that, it's not a law, and the arguments that ensue. I always call it, when people ask me, I call it the Goldilocks virus. And my example is that if we had 100,000 people and the virus came along and killed 50,000 of them, we wouldn't be having any discussions about whether or not to wear masks. Right. But because it's a sliver of the population each time, or every day, at one point in New York, we were losing 700 people a day. But still, that apparently wasn't enough to collectively get everybody to say, you're right, let's just wear the masks and see what we can do. So, and we're having these arguments all the time, these stories we see. It's sad to me that we have to put another thing on your plate.
The guidelines, too.
Yeah, and just let me give you an idea of what, during COVID, when the virus hit, right, the county exec called me up somewhere around March 13th, and she says, I need you to become the incident commander for the county. So not only my role of running the police department, I oversaw all the other entities that would be involved in fighting the COVID virus.
Okay.
Police medics, fire service, fire departments, funeral directors, hospitals, they all ran their individual role. They're the experts. I'm not telling somebody from NUMIC what to do. But I was their point of contact through the OEM office to get them their proper protective gear, to make sure we got enough body bags, to make sure we got enough refrigeration. At one point in the height of this, one day we tested 2,477 positive cases in Nassau County. And we had, that same day, we had 61 people die in our hospitals. That backs up everything. And, we ran out of body bags at one point because you had to double bag the bodies in case the fluid broke and was carrying the virus. Right. We ran out of refrigeration. We had to order refrigeration trucks to store the bodies. And all along, our ME's office did an outstanding job, our medics in our hospitals, in protecting the respect of those people of their different religious needs when somebody passes, on how it should happen. We tried to do all of that and be respectful of, obviously, the person that died. So we roll out of that, and then in comes, protest, and protesters are not wearing masks. Cops were not wearing masks. People just said, hey, I'm done. I'm not wearing this mask no more.
Right. How
do we handle it? And even today, the governor's coming down with, it's going to be, I think it's a $50 fine.
Yep, for MTA, yep. MTA. Railroad. Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I get it. I get it because we want you to wear a mask. We want you to be safe. We want you to continue, open up the restaurants, open up the bars and the entertainment areas. There's a way to do it. Keeping the number low, respecting that distance, that space, if you will. You ever talk to somebody that one of these people that talk right?
Yeah, close talker. Yeah.
And
it's good in 6 feet,
and wearing the mask. So what we've done in Nassau County is we found a way, just like we did in protest. Let's de-escalate this. Let's find a way to keep everybody calm. We go to a place that there's a call on and we see it. We go peacefully. We don't go up and go, give me your ID, you get the summons. We go up and say, look, got to wear a mask, got to be respectful, got to keep distancing, blah, blah, blah. Whatever we got to tell the restaurant, the bar owner. If they comply, we move on. If we got to come back, then we got to get a little bit more stricter. But our first response has always been, let's see if we can mitigate this. Let's bring it down, not raise it up, not cause, hey, I'm done with you guys. I'm trying to have my dinner. We understand that, sir, but when you go to the bathroom, out of respect for everybody else, you got to put that mask on.
Yeah.
I've been out with my wife to some of the restaurants, and I see that. Sometimes I forget. I jump out of my car every single day to go to my 7-Eleven for coffee. I get 2 steps.
We're only human, of course. Like I was just not natural.
I was just going to bring that up. That's that one time I found myself. I was inside the 7-Eleven already making my coffee.
People start looking at.
I saw somebody walk in the door and they have a mask on. I went, oh my God, I forgot.
You pull your shirt up and you hold it like
I ran outside. Boy. I ran outside and got it. I was like, that was
months ago. You walked into a 7-Eleven with a mask up. They're calling 911.
Exactly.
Now, don't go with a mask. They're calling 911.
Everyone's got a bandana, got the thing put over their face and stuff like that. But
somebody said that standing at the bank. I said, I feel very shaky standing there with a mask on and
goggles and everything for people. But I mean, like you said, I know we were talking about the logistics of the mask and the kind of individual one-on-one kind of circumstances with patrons. Some of them might be maybe have had a few drinks. I know that probably doesn't make it any easier for officers, but the nature of, like you said, respecting not just the public and the people who may have pre-existing conditions, but the frontline workers themselves. But could you talk a little bit more about maybe working with the businesses and thinking about like the SLA and how, again, these bars, we've heard a lot of them from different parts of Long Island are a part of losing their license because they're not following guidelines. So can you talk a little bit more about like how NCPD is involved with institutions and those types of guideline enforcement?
So part of the role of OEM and working with the fire marshal and the police department, and as the incident commander, we're out there educating them on what the guidelines are. Very confusing in the beginning on some of this. Now it's a little bit more defined. All new. But synagogues, having to have services on Saturday. The high holy days are coming in next Friday. They want to have services outside. They can. They want to know if they can expand the number above 50. The answer is no. But you can do 50, move them through, bring in the next 50. You have several different places they can go to. In the Jewish faith, that you don't have to go to the same synagogue. You can use others during prayer, just like in the Catholic faith, and I'm sure the Muslim faith too. But the idea of educating those on what the rules are, it was difficult in the beginning. In the Jewish faith, if you get married, you have to have 11 people. The rule was 10. 10 including everybody, including the priest or the rabbi. Oh, boy. So, so we're trying to explain you can't. That's the rule. Look, did we look the other way? And I'm going to tell you, we looked the other way. They need to have the wedding because you have to be married in a certain time. They were 11. They were wearing masks. They were doing what they needed to do. They got through it. One didn't make the difference. And I don't
that's that's not unreasonable at all.
And that was never the governor's intent to say, 10's the number. If they break it by 1, lock them up. No.
Yeah.
The governor said, hey, we got to get a number. We got to slow everybody down, keep it contained. And in the state of New York, we were ground zero, Long Island. Nassau County, outside, if you took the 8 million people in New York City and you take the 1.4 million here in Nassau County, we were ground zero. A lot of the patients came from the city, ended up in our hospitals.
Yep.
In General, in North Shore.
Definitely.
And we turned around and we were able to bring it down to now we're one of the safest counties in the country. And we've sustained the number along with Suffolk County. We sustained the number. So we're going to see spikes. This is the flu season. People are going to think they got the flu. They're going to say, I got COVID. They're all different. My advice, go get that flu shot. I was never a big flu shot person. I'd go get the flu shot. Maybe I can prevent the flu and you start having a fear that it's COVID. Many people, like I said, with the businesses, we work hand in hand with them. We realize they got to exist. If they don't exist, we lose the revenue. If we lose the revenue, we can't fund what we need to the services. Those services are police medics and police officers and fire services.
Yeah, from the tax base and everything else, of course.
Yeah. Well, you spoke before about the entertainment industry, and I was looking up some numbers, and they said nationally they're responsible for about $1 trillion across the country. But just for Long Island and the New York area, it's something like $14 billion a year that generates. So when you think of, I of course think of the bands that are playing. That's my thing. I play in bands, and they're all done. There's no way to,
Look, and I use one establishment that I frequented quite often because of the events that they have is Mulcahy's here in Wanto.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So Mulcahy's just expanded right before COVID. They just opened up this beautiful side room. They're one of the largest entertainment areas now in Nassau County.
Yep.
I think their max capacity now they're letting them have is 150 people. 150 people because they space out tables. I went in there the other night to say hello, and they go, you got to sit at the table. I'm just saying hello. No, you got to sit at the table.
Yeah.
I forgot. You're right. So I go and I sit at the table. Then they go, we're going to bring you some food. I go, no, I'm good. I just ate down the block at the Wanto Inn. And they go, no, you got to have. So they bring me a tray of meatballs. I didn't need the meatballs, but that's how they got to exist. And they had a band out there, and the band was, they had their distancing up there, and we had a distancing, and it existed. But normally that venue is going to have 1,500 to 2,000 people in it.
Going to say at those numbers, then that's not going to afford their rent.
And a place like Mulcahy's and a place like a lot of these establishments, they're so good to the community that the community suffers. The Little League teams and the lacrosse teams and the Boy Scouts, girls, whatever the program is, they're always giving back to their communities. And now they don't have the ability to give back because they don't have the money. They're losing the shirts.
One of the things that I thought about that made me kind of sad was that we don't have really, that I can think of, any drive-in theaters left on Long Island, because this would be an answer to part of that. You could have band concerts, have the band up on a stage, just like they do at Jones Beach, have 2 big screens so that everybody can then see, and you tune the music in on your car radio.
Well, Town of Hempstead did something like that down at Lido.
Yeah.
Beautiful screen. I drove by it when it was being set up, and they were able to do that little concert outside. And I think we're going there. The concern always is we start to get out of our car. We start to dance. Now we're congregating. Or now you're coming in the pickup. I'm still in my car, but I'm in the back of my pickup. But I was in Mulcahy the night, and I watched the guy, as the band's playing, taking his chair and spinning it around and spinning himself and doing this. He's dancing in his chair with his wife and doing all this. And I'm sitting there going, they're making the best of it. And we can do that. We can do that as a community, make the best of it.
Yeah, but we really need to reinvent so many things.
Yeah, and adapt, definitely.
Yeah, and we will. We will overcome.
Oh, yeah. Just like you said, like 9/11, the ground zero is those lessons you take from it, and it's how you, build back better and Sandy or whatever it may be, just trying to learn those lessons and make sure that, moving forward, the place is safer for everyone. So, I said, it's good to hear that.
Well, I have something else on my list here that interested me, too. I understand that at one time, Newsday did report it, that they were thinking of giving the cops body cameras. Is that still in the works, or is that a good idea or a bad idea?
You know what? It's a mix. And some say yes, some say no. From a manager standpoint, there's a lot of benefits to it because we get in the Nassau County Police Department. I can only speak for this agency.
Right.
We have over 1 million interactions with the public a year, way over 1 million. We get 0.05% complaints against our members. And out of those 5 complaints, very few of them are founded. We don't have brutality cases. Most of them are for being disrespectful or not proper in their tactics. So not a big thing. But those numbers, when New York City, speaking of New York City, those numbers went down. Freeport Police Department has body cams. The complaints went down because when somebody gets pulled over for a red light ticket, they know they ran the red light. You go up and you address that person. There's an engagement that goes back and forth. The officer's going to know he's on tape. So he's going to be respectful. That person doesn't know they're always on tape. And they'll come back and say, the officer was disrespectful, this and that. Oh, is this the same officer here? And we play the tape. And it's like, oh, and there's no complaint now. So it's the transparency world that the world is big on, right? We're all about transparency. There's cameras everywhere. There's never an event that we can't find a camera to capture something. So these items are rolling forward as the county exec put out a request for proposals to come in from different companies. We have to meet with the unions. They have to negotiate, right? Because you have to protect also the officers' privacy issues. I'm in the car with my partner and I'm talking about something with my wife at home or my kids. I don't want somebody recording that. And the camera shuts off in the car. So we have to make sure that those safety precautions are put in place. We also have to make sure that we can meet the court's needs because everything under the reforms of justice reform, discovery, every minute of those tapes has to be turned over when there's an arrest made. How far do we go back? Is it an hour before? Or is it 5 minutes before the arrest? And when who's going to do that? It's a massive amount of money to do this program. And I'm running the number of about $25 million a year.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's like you said, the legal evidence, though, potentially could even save some money from litigation, from again, like you said, suits that may not have been valid, or like I said, even for the defense potentially of cases where maybe the officer, there was something that was a little bit askew, and you could say, okay, well, this is here, so this is something that we can address internally or something. We don't have to deal with.
An argument can be made on both sides. Look. God forbid there's a shooting and someone says he was unarmed. And I've seen this before, too, in neighborhoods where there's a shooting, police shooting. Cop swears he had a gun. Guy gets shot. Someone in the crowd picks up the gun disappears. There's no video of that, right? So, and now the cop's swearing he has a gun. Sure, and now the video could prevent those situations where we have unrest and so forth, right? Because, look, he didn't have a gun. Here's the video shows it. Or on the other side of that, he didn't have a gun. The cop is wrong. Now we got to figure out what happened here. So
exactly.
There's arguments to be made on both sides. But again, like everything we do with the reforms, don't paint it with a broad brush. Let's look. Yeah. Let's slow it down. Let's see what the items do. Let's see what the unions do. And let's see what the government does. And then when we figure out something and we all work together on it, how are we going to pay for it?
Yeah.
That's the other item.
That's definitely key. I guess since we're back on the topic, and you're talking about the nature of transparency, I guess can you speak a little bit about the changes in the state law regarding 50A, the repeal with that, and obviously disciplinary records being a big part of this conversation for reform, and how that information is being allowed to be out in the public, but I guess what, like you said, methods are being taken to kind of keep some preservation of privacy or confidentiality when it's not relevant, because it's only the relevant information that we need, obviously. So
we look back in the history of why 50A was started. 50A was started to protect the rights of an officer. That did not, defense counsel doesn't use that item against that officer when it has nothing to do with this arrest. And so it was put in place to protect those rights and not turn over. But the courts had always had the ability to say, I want to see that officer's record. It would be for the eyes of the court. The court would look at it and say to the defense counsel, no, this has nothing to do with it. You're not getting access to it. Give the file back to the police department. But now with 50A, defense counsels can ask for it, and they're supposed to get access to it. The difference is they never handled the FOIL request. So under FOIL, I'm still allowed to protect that, and I'm still allowed to redact information, my personal information, my home numbers, my items that have nothing to do with what I arrest you for a burglary, and they want to know about a thing that was a founded case for improper tactics. I stop you at a car stop. I don't approach the car correctly. There's a complaint made, and then we look at it. We don't find the complaint founded, but we find that you did something improper in your approach to the vehicle or how you did stop. That has nothing to do with that car stop, but it does have to do with the way we tactically train you. Now we have an arrest 2 years later, and they go, oh, he's got a founded case for improper tactics. That shouldn't be turned over. It has nothing to do with the arrest of you, unless you're saying that your arrest was improper tactics by the officer. So again, it comes into those challenges, and we in the police department, we're not turning everything over as of right now, like the city did. Just here's the button, everybody get access. You can look at it.
Yeah.
We are required to turn over founded cases. How far we go back is the question. And what founded cases are there? Like I just gave you that example. I'm founded because I didn't wear my tie that day out at a detail where I'm supposed to wear my tie. Then jumping forward, and they say, well, we want that founded case. It has nothing to do with it, so we're not going to give it to you. But again, that's the transparency part.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they would call that. That's kind of like a nuisance, mark on the officer. Somebody was a little ticked off that he stopped me,
because we always had 50A. We didn't really separate that out and say that's a nuisance. We left it in one pile. Now the pile has been opened up, and it's like, well, wait a minute. This has nothing to do with law enforcement. This has to do with a tactic, the way we train our officers. So nothing to do with the arrest. So
okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And just for clarity, the FOIL being the Freedom of Information Law request, that you were speaking about. So can you just talk about, too, though, with Nassau, like you said, being different from the city, we do know the issue, though, with FOIL requests sometimes were that there would be years that it would take to get this information, and then meanwhile, there would be just a lot of speculation, and there really wouldn't be any ability to kind of really move along in the proceeding until that information was granted. But this information now being out there a little bit more quickly, it gives more ability, I guess, to deal with it at the time versus maybe down the line. Is that potentially in the benefit, though, of both parties, you think? Well,
I think the benefit was when asked, we give. Opening up the door and let everybody take free shots at us is not the best way to do business, right? And you also got to remember, in a FOIL, we're a government entity, and you guys work for the government, as you know. Mm-hmm. We're not up to speed like IBM. Or Apple. To get these files, they're all paper.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not electronic. So the city, fortunately, is, and they're much advanced in that when it comes to technology, that they were able to push a button and push it out. But they didn't push out the file. They pushed out the name, the date, the time, and that was it. So you say Officer Murphy. You know how many Officer Murphys there are in the NYPD?
Exactly.
So, we looked at that and like, oh my God, there's Murphys all over the place. I think it was like 25 pages of Murphys. So knowing where and stuff. So it's not as simple as, and that's why sometimes the FOIL gets delayed. It also gets delayed because of challenges. We have union rules that we have to protect. We have government rules we have to protect, and we also have the rules of the courts that says you got to give the FOIL. So we take it all into perspective. We try to turn our FOILs around timely. But again, government entity, we don't have resources, we don't have technology like that, and it's slow. You will get it, but if it's permissible, but it will take time.
Understand. Yeah. Okay, let's remind our listeners that they are listening to this week's Long Island News here on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and we are, again, along here with the Commissioner of Nassau County Police Department, Patrick Ryder. I guess just to piggyback off of that, maybe we'll bring it back close to home and still related to reform, the new police facility that's right on our campus over here. I know last time we spoke, it was about, I think you said about 60% maybe or so. We were, moving into the second half of that, again, construction project. Could you say, I guess, let us know how COVID may have interrupted? We just mentioned how county funds aren't necessarily there for a lot of things. Do you expect any real interruption or delay coming from it, or just give us an overview of what's going on with that?
Timing in this world is everything. That was put as a capital project, was bonded and approved way before COVID.
Yep.
Construction is about 72%, I think, as of this morning. 72% done. We did a tour of it last week. It's a beautiful facility. Now it's just raw concrete, but the design of it, the way it works.
Yep.
When you talk about reform and you talk about community engagement, you couldn't ask for a better facility to do that. And you talk about multiple agencies cross-training. We don't have a facility to do that anywhere in the county of Nassau unless we took over some college campuses. Now we have that facility. We train with students, bringing that diversity in. We train with outside agencies, and we're going to build next to it what's called the Tactical Village. In the Tactical Village, we'll have a real 2-lane highway, which will intersect with another cross street. It'll also have, which will give a 4-way intersection. It'll give some homes on it. There'll be a Cape, a Levitt, and let's say a Colonial. There'll be a bank on it. There'll be a restaurant on it. There'll be a gas station. There'll be a train station. There'll be a gazebo and a little L-shaped school. That's being built with all private money, no cost to the taxpayers, through the foundation. It's being built right next to it. Now bring your community to the field. Bring them into the game. And let them say, okay, officer, respond to 123 Sycamore Street. That's one of our houses. You get there. It's a Muslim home. Understanding the sensitivity of that culture makes me police it better.
Cultural competency. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And if I understand why that woman wouldn't shake my hand, I don't take it as offensive. That's part of the culture. Same as an Orthodox Jewish. Taking your shoes off when you walk into the prayer section of the mosque. Take your shoes off, officer. I'm not taking my shoes off. I'm a Catholic. That's respect for the culture.
It builds trust, like you're saying. Exactly. Yeah.
And that trust, when we build that trust, when we have that, the better understanding of me of the culture and the culture understanding of my culture, law enforcement culture, is what's going to make us understand each other and trust each other better and understand why that got done the way it got done.
And certainly if you have command of the things that you can control, then the number of things that you can't control are smaller, just like knowing that what the culture is. She's not going to shake my hand because that's what they do.
Exactly right. But I can effectively put my hand on my chest area in a heart, and that's what in the Muslim community a man does to a woman, and they give a nod, like, get Anthony, hello.
Yeah.
That's big. That's really big.
No, exactly.
I think that certainly, circumvents a lot of problems, things that didn't have to be a problem.
Misinterpretations, it can avoid them.
And then take it another step. We're going to bring the kids in on the weekends. We're going to do basketball camps. We can do soccer camps. We can do street interactions, police and youth interaction, where we understand each other. Why do I keep my kid keeps his hand when he gets pulled over, keep it on the steering wheel? Why? Because I taught him that. Because I don't want that officer to mistake that reach for something that's in that car, that water pistol there that's in that car. And my son, keep your hands there.
Yep.
Be responsive. If that officer is disrespectful, file the complaint the next day. But if you challenge him, it never gets anywhere in the good place. Let's be responsive and know the process then to make a complaint. Part of my transparency in our reforms is we're going to make it so easy for you to make a complaint, there won't be a problem. My officers are wrong. I want to know if they're wrong. My 99% of my officers that are good want to say, hey, that guy, I don't want that guy next to me if he's a bad guy causing me.
Exactly.
So we know how to police ourselves. We just got to do it get the community to understand what we do to get there.
So could you go a little bit more into detail too, though? Like you just mentioned that training, like you mentioned, kind of role play of dealing with different circumstances at this facility, about how, again, some of those new methods of training will be implemented there, and how those will have an impact on police reform that advocates have been obviously so interested in trying to get manifested.
Yeah, so we've gone, we lecture to our cops all the time. So here you go. We're going to talk about implicit bias. What is implicit bias? And I use Archie Bunker as implicit bias. Yeah. We understand Archie Bunker. Some of the young kids never saw Archie Bunker.
Yeah, right.
It was comical. It was funny. But in that time and era, everybody laughed. But it wasn't. It's insensitive. It's not that Carol O'Connor was not a bad person. That thing today wouldn't be accepted. So we put our officers in those role playing now. And we tell you, and I use the example, you're pulling into let's say a 95% white community, and there's two African-American young men sitting in a car at 3 o'clock in the morning on a side street. And I that's all I give them. I don't give them any other details. I go,
right.
You're the cop driving by. Do you stop and engage? And I did this to my students the other day in Nassau community. All the white kids, you know what they said? No, that would be a violation of their Fourth Amendment right. Come on, don't give me the script. Tell me what you think you would really do. And the kids of color that are in my class, they go, no, I think I'd stop them. And I looked at them all. I said, 100% you stop them. I don't care if they're black, white, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. It's 3 o'clock in the morning on a side street. But when you stop them, you don't stop them with your gun out and say, get out of the car.
Yeah, right.
You go up, you approach, and you say, how you doing, guys? Everything all right? Yeah. Can I see your license registration? What's going on? Nothing, officer. We're here parked, dropping off my girlfriend on the side street. Great, no problem. It's the common law right of inquiry. It's permissible. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm respectful to them. They're respectful to me. And I move on because on the other side, they could be burglars that are going to burglarize the place. And it's not because they're black. It's because they're two people on a side street at 3 o'clock in the morning.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, right. Yeah.
Exactly. But people, we got to stop trying to be hidden, and they use that scenario, driving while black, right? And it's a true scenario around the country. We know that, right? That's part of reforms, trying to do it better. But if we put down the guard a minute and stop being so sensitive, and have the honest conversations and dialogue. Like I said, my students said, "Oh, that would be a violation of the Fourth Amendment right." Okay, guy, come on, this is not your constitutional law class, and it's not a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's good police work and good community relations, because that same kid that's sitting in that car may live at that house, and he's probably going to say thank you for stopping.
Right.
And I use one more example. I'm the cop. I pull behind the high school parking lot, and over in the distance, there's a car. It's parked. It's all dark. It's all fogged out, and there's steam on the windows, and the car's moving around. Do I approach? And do I approach? And some people say, leave them alone. There's probably a couple just making out. It's just this, it's that. Okay. If I don't approach, suppose it's a young girl being raped. Suppose it's, they're on property where they shouldn't be. There's definitely something going on in the car, and it could be. But we don't come up and shine the lights in there looking to sit. We knock on the glass. Hey, what's going on? Just me and my girlfriend are hanging out, officer. All right, look, you're not supposed to be here at night. Not the best place for you to be parked. Maybe we want to move along, okay? That type. But if we don't approach that car and there's a 16-year-old girl that getting raped in that car, we will never know that. So, but that's educating each other. That's understanding. And if you do it respectful, 90% of the time, no one's going to have a problem.
It keeps the potential threat in context. It makes sense.
There are quite a few towns on Long Island that have laws about not parking on the street after 11 o'clock at night, and it's perfectly specifically for that reason. Because if you are parked on the street after 11 o'clock at night, something's up. And
a lot of the villages do that.
Yeah. My expectation would be, or just a thought process, is that if you're sitting in a car at 3 o'clock in the morning and an officer approaches your car, I would assume every thinking person would know exactly why he approached the car. For somebody to say, I got bothered,
Well, let me take you out. Let me take you out of our role and now be those two kids.
Exactly.
And those two kids are African American, and they're like, "You're pulling me over because I'm black?"
Yeah, and they could live there. That could be in front of their home. Yeah.
We have to understand that's a reality that they feel.
Yes.
So we have to say, no, we're not pulling you black. And part of the reform, they talk about hotspot policing. They talk about evidence-based policing. So my answer would be, no, guys, the reason I'm stopping you, we've had 2 burglaries in the neighborhood. It was done by a blue car. It was done by 2 males. I doesn't know the race because they wore ski masks. I'm doing my due diligence here. It has nothing to do because you're black, nothing to do with the street. It has to do with the factual why I'm here is this hotspot policing. Okay, officer. Thank you for the explanation. Not
exactly.
Idiot. You just give me your license and do what I tell you.
Exactly. Not the adversarial kind of again connotation, but the nature of I'm part of your community. I want to make sure your community is okay. Make sure you're okay. So just if you have any information, let me know.
That's always going to be the perception is always going to be a problem. I had a neighbor used to live in a different house here, and it was across the street from me, and he said, if I see a black person walking down this block at 3:00 in the morning, he said, I'm going to have questions, and people would call that racial profiling. And his response to me was, I call that good police work. And the way he said it was, if this was an all-black neighborhood, and I saw someone white walking down the middle of the street, he said, besides that, it's 3:00 in the morning. If I saw anybody walking down the street,
that's the right answer.
The bigger key.
I would want to know what the heck are you doing at 3:00 in the morning that you couldn't do at 6 p.m. or what's going on?
Total legitimate reason for that.
Exactly.
It could be my dog just ran out of the house. I'm looking for my dog. He ran out of the house.
A million different things.
Okay.
If we don't inquire, then we're negligent. We're not doing
exactly.
But like I said, it's being, able to have that situation just be, like I said, just basic inquisitive and, keep it cordial, and then everyone can move on with their day if that's what's supposed to happen. Let's go ahead.
In that world of implicit bias, we and this is something that we're training our officers on. Mm-hmm. We have to understand what they feel. So perception over reality, right?
Exactly.
How about the perception can be fixed by reality? Give them the response. Give them the due respect that they have as a human being walking down the street, but also do it with then say, hey, no, here's the reason, guy. Here's why I stopped you. Okay. Yep. And if still the person doesn't like it, then file a complaint. But we'll get the answers later if we're doing it the right way.
Yep. Let's remind our listeners that we are moving through this hour pretty fast, and we are here still on this week's Long Island News with Patrick Ryder, the commissioner from the Nassau County Police Department on 90.3 WHPC. I guess maybe just quickly if we can mention 2 things. Like you just said, keeping the civility and keeping the discourse open and having everything in context, the best you can. The ability for NCPD to balance the right to protest, obviously, peacefully, and also public safety. Obviously, it's always a fluid situation. Full disclosure, I have seen you a part of the policing of some of these protests out in the community. And, overall, it's good to see that most of the interactions with police and the protesters have been pretty positive. There's been times where I'd say counter-protesters kind of being aggressive towards the protest, and police are managed to able to intervene and mediate between both parties and make sure everyone just kind of, is out there to, be there and then just move on. So can you talk about how, I guess, your office has been doing that, like I said, on the ground?
The ideology that we had regarding these protests was simple. De-escalate. When you come to Merritt and you have 5,000 people protesting, if I had every single cop working along with the state police, I still don't have enough, right? So, because if 1,000 people want to tear the town down, they're going to tear the town down. We're going to arrest some people. It's not going to be pretty, but it's not going to work out. So we can't win that fight. They have a First Amendment right to peacefully protest. Yep. And for the most part, the protests, they weren't, and again, we balanced violence and peaceful, right? They were definitely not violent. They were definitely not destructive. There was no criminal mischief. There was no looting. There was no fires. There was 14 minor arrests, and nobody got hurt.
Yeah,
On the other side of the coin, we were walking, and they'd be cursing us out, but we told the cops, look, engage, speak to them. Talk to them. Bring it down. We're not lining up guys walking with you with riot helmets and nightsticks. We walk with our police hats on and our traffic vests, showing that we're keeping us safe and we're keeping you safe. We're going to give you that ability to protest and get out what you need to get out and say what you need to say. Part of your First Amendment. And we walked with you for miles and miles and miles. That being said, some people you walk up and you say, hey, how you doing? And they curse you out. Then you walk up the next one, how you doing? I'm good, officer. How are you? Good. Hey, where do you go to school? And you start talking. Most of these kids were 60% white. They were probably ranging from the ages of 18 and 29. That's our gauge on this crowd.
Yeah.
Most of them not looking for trouble. You get your instigators. You get some that continue to be instigating. They're looking to fire this thing up again. We won't engage. We will make arrests when it's proper. We will no longer allow those to violate the street, obstructing traffic. You know, if they give us the route, they follow the rules, and they keep moving, this can go on forever. We're okay. We'll keep walking with you.
Yeah.
If you're not going to give us the route, you're not going to follow the route, and you're going to violate what we set up as the path.
Agreed. Yeah.
We're going to be fine. You know, but if you don't follow it, we're not going to be fine. But our whole theory was de-escalate. I walked down the street with a young cop. I said to the young cop, I said, look at the sign on the lawn. Thank you, first responders. You're our heroes, cops, firemen, nurses, doctors, you know, essential workers. And on the other side, I said, now listen to what they're saying to you. F you racist pigs, you should all die. They go, how do you feel, officer? And I asked several of these guys, because I walked a lot of these protests. And I said to them, how do you feel? Boss, I'm good. I got it. I understand. The kids, society today, the young society today are much more acceptable than we were brought up in the environment that we were brought up. We were kind of brought up in that Archie Bunker world. Today, these kids are much more accepting. And
Throws off the shoulder. Yeah.
And they're sitting there and they're walking with me and I'm talking to them. And again, and you know, but this is the environment. They're looking at the wrist. They go, boss, I'm 13,000 steps in today. So, and you know, and he goes, I'm being paid to be here. You know, they're not punching me. They're not throwing rocks at me. They're not hitting me. They're not spitting on me.
Yep.
They're walking. They're yelling. They're cursing at me. But I don't think they really mean it at me. I think they just mean to get it out. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's more to this. It's not police brutality. There's housing. There's jobs. There's all of it. You know?
All the underlying factors, like you said. It just happens that you're the public face a lot of times. Yeah.
And I think that the hardest thing in the situation of a protest is if you have 1,000 people in a group and one guy decides to throw a bottle, now you have the perception of the people watching that is so important, because if you see the guy throw the bottle, you say, oh, we've got a troublemaker. But if you don't see the guy throw the bottle, you look at 1,000 people and say, we got a riot.
So you know who helps us? The protesters.
Exactly.
I give you one example in Merritt. 5,000 people.
Yep.
I'm at the back end of the protest, and I watch about 150, 200 move all of a sudden towards a beauty salon in Merritt.
Uh-oh.
I go running over that way. I jump a little knee wall. I get up there, and there's this older white woman. She's giving them the finger, yelling and screaming at them. A bunch of them move towards her. I get her. I put her behind me, and I could feel her claws into my back. And 6 or 7 protesters stepped in front and said to the rest of the protesters, we're not doing that. We're not here for that. Get back onto the street and continue to. And I went, oh, wow. And one of those protesters, this man, John Johnson from Elmont, I still speak to him today. And he was like, oh, you know, I was not winning that fight. She definitely was not winning that fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the protesters stepped in. My cops got there. Everybody got back in. We finished 260 protests in this county. Over 40,000 people. No damage, no looting, no fires, no big arrests except for a couple of minors. And at the end of the day, you know, the message got out there and everybody came home at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Got up the next day and got their cup of coffee at the 7-Eleven and their bagel or donut and said, you know what? Little headaches last night, but we're on our way.
No, exactly.
Yeah, but that's the thing that's got to, you know, that's the thing that's got to pervade the whole, just the protesting scenario, you know. And again, cooler heads prevailed.
Yep, but it goes into the input and the work that, like you said, yourself and your officers, by practicing discipline, by not getting egged into, what was maybe intended, this kind of back and forth, where now the crowd says, you know what, maybe we'll look at what they were doing the whole time on the route. Now we're going against the police. Now they say, you know what, they were good to us. So, like I said, let's not cause more conflict and undermine what that greater goal of that movement may be. So I think, like I said, that really goes to it.
I said earlier, the bottle thrower.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There were bottle throwers, not physically throwing bottles, but there were people that were pushing it to the max.
Yeah.
Right.
There was times where it came close, but the discipline from this officer is saying, hey, I'm not going. I'm not fighting it. Because then it would have been the officer was the aggressor.
Yep. And that's the press story, and then that just continues to escalate versus de-escalate, like you said, which is the whole purpose of everything that we're talking about today, basically. I guess we're getting there to the close. I don't know what else you have, but I did want to just maybe touch with schools reopening now, obviously, and there are going to be concerns about potentially spiking with COVID rates and stuff like that. Could you just say maybe again how NCPD and maybe your role with OEM, how you're taking measures to, again, keep kids safe at school, teachers, and just keep, hopefully, at least the time until we next speak, a little bit better than maybe the in-between since our last conversation.
So the relationship between the school superintendents and the Nassau County Police Department has never been better. And that's because of school shootings, school violence. We had, I think it was close to 200 shootings in this country before March, before we broke with the COVID. So we engaged all along with the schools. The schools helped us. They gave us their anonymizers or the spray bottles, what you call them, that were able to spray for the virus. They lent them to us because we couldn't get them. So we were spraying up police cars because of what the school. So we have a great partnership and great leadership in our schools. We got together with them. We talked about programs, how we can help each other out. And then last week we announced our school resource program is right back up in gear. We're not just afraid about COVID. We're also afraid about those active shooters and those acting of violence. We've seen violence on the rise in this country. We've seen crime on the rise. Nassau County crime reduced 20%. 20% in the so far this year. We're after record low crime last year because we stayed our eye on the ball. Don't lose the focus of our crime because of COVID. Don't lose the focus of crime because of protests. Handle these issues, but also remember what we're here to do, protect and serve. And we were able to get a reduction in crime, which is unheard of right now in the country.
Yeah, especially when you see what's happening in the city. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, really. Well, Commissioner Ryder, we just want to get a promise from you that you'll come back soon and talk to us again. We don't want to. 6 months from last time it was.
It was a lot longer than that.
You're always informative, and we really appreciate some of the clarity that you put to a lot of these issues because as the populace, sometimes we just sit here sucking our thumb, wondering what's going on, and it's really good.
We are here to help, and we're very thankful for the partnership with having these opportunities to get our message out there that the public hears.
Yeah, we love it.
All right, guys.
Thanks again, Commissioner. Take care.
You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. We hope you have a great Friday. We hope you have a great week until we come back again. And I believe next week we're actually going to speak to Madeline Singas, the
DA.
District Attorney of Nassau County. So we got a nice consortium of, the movers and shakers. That's you guys.
Yep, we had County Executive Curran last week. So a lot of people well, I'm sure, from working over the last years.
Oh, good.
We really appreciate it. We can't tell you enough that we appreciate it. Anyway, so we'll see everybody next time, same place. Have a great week.